Other than that, like kind of like I told you, right? It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Just have conversation, like really targeted at just something that would help underdogs, and just go from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can edit, so
for sure.
Yeah, here, I'll start with prayer. Lord, we just thank you. Lord, just work through us to connect with whoever's watching. Let this be about just serving people and just inspiring them to continue on. Lord, let's also use this to just celebrate our friendship, celebrate our journey, and just catch a vibe with you. Amen. Just so, like, underdog, like, your story needs to be heard. Like, this whole thing is about celebrating underdogs and just telling their story.
Underrated, we the underdogs, underestimated, yeah. Underrated, we the underdogs, underestimated, we the ones, yeah, we the ones, yeah, we the ones, we the ones, yeah.
Hey, yo, what up? Underdog fam, man. I just starting something new. I'm just going all throughout Denver. Even if you don't live in Denver, if you just in the area, pull up on me, man. Just kind of navigate, go through underdog rabbit holes with dope people. That can just inspire whoever's watching, and we'll see where it goes. So today, got somebody really, really special to me, and I'm excited because I get to celebrate his underdog journey, but I was a part of it as he was growing up. So Roderick Bernstine, CEO of Be a Good Person, right?
Yes, sir.
So everybody in Denver better know who Be a Good Person is, but just in case somebody is watching from somewhere else, why don't you tell us what you got going with Be a Good Person?
Of course, yeah. So Be a Good Person is just a company based around fashion.
Yeah.
We use fashion as almost like our platform, and then just continue to like almost and challenge each individual to just continue to be better in all that they do. Not only being good at life, but being good to people, being a good person, and just channeling that in everything that you do. You know, the main thing that I think Be a Good Person focuses on is just not holding you to a perfect standard, although that's something we all try to obtain.
Yeah.
I think it's about allowing for you to be good at things and to sometimes fail, but also get back up and overcome. And so that's the main message behind Be a Good Person. We do a lot of different things with different organizations. We just did a collaboration with the Colorado Rockies just a while back for opening day. We do stuff with Make-A-Wish. We've done work with No Kid Hungry. We do all kinds of things to just kind of give back to the community, as well as just continuing to push fashion and just changing the world almost.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's smooth. It sounded real CEO-ish, so you're doing a good job. And like I said, we didn't know this was a blank slate about what we was going to talk about.
For sure.
But I like what you said. I think that's important. Let's just start there. You said, like, you made an emphasis about being perfect. I talk a lot of time in the book. There's a whole chapter, and there's a lot of, we deal with that a lot, but there's one specific chapter, as you said, that popped up. You know, I was coaching the high school team this summer. I was their interim coach. And the thing about my workouts is you're going to fail a lot. And they internalize that failure as they're not improving. And sometimes we get so focused on failing that we don't recognize the improvement. And I think a lot of times for me, I try to empower people by making them aware of how much they're improving. Because when you're aware of how much you're improving, you can digest the failure that comes along the way. And the way that I say it to like in the book, my audience in the book, but the people that I train is you can't do both. There's gonna come a point in time where you got to decide: am I going to be the most aggressive version of myself, or am I going to strive to be the perfect version of myself? Even in friendships, as you journey through being a CEO, I'm sure there are a lot of failures, even me writing a book or whatever it is.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? What do you think about that kind of internal struggle of perfection and aggression? I just don't think that they can really coexist.
I want to tune in on one point that you made about just continuing to also affirm people for doing things correctly. I feel like we live in a world where a lot of times people aren't affirming you unless you're doing something to a perfection or to a high standard.
Right.
So I think that's important. So accolade to you for continuing to do that. And I would say you even did that with me back when I was on my journey through basketball and through life. Sure. So starting with that, I think that's something that I think everybody can almost and cherish and take in and be like, hey, I can also just continue to remind others about the great things that they're doing, because it's like, I think there's a oversight on the fact that people a lot of times aren't really receiving a lot of verbal communication from people telling them on how good they're doing, whether they're an athlete or a CEO or an entrepreneur or whatever it is. It's not a lot of people are telling you how great you're doing, but it's an oversight, because not as an outsider looking in, a lot of times people aren't willing to be like, hey man, you're doing a really good job with that. Hey, I really like what you're doing with that. So I think that is what kind of carries into what you're asking, is the perfection thing, because everybody wants to be perfect so that they're never seen as failing, because the main thing is as long as they feel perfect and they're doing things that resemble perfection, then that looks a lot better than them happening to stumble and fall on trying to go as hard as they can aggressively at a goal. And so it's like a catch-22, because it's like you either strive for that perfection or you go really, really hard and you stumble and you almost overcome the failures and treat them as just like, hey, I tripped. It's okay. I can get right back up. And so that's even something that I look at Be a Good Person. It's like, hey, nobody's perfect. You know, everybody's trying to strive to be that. But it's like, you're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. But it's like, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to overcome and just succumb to the situation that, hey, I may not have necessarily performed the way I wanted to in this situation, but who am I going to become in the future? Am I going to challenge myself to continue to be more?
Yeah, no, there's so much of that that's like covered in the book. You know what I mean? So, you know, I think that, you know, just you keep saying strive to be perfection, strive to reach perfection, I should say, excuse me. And my question and my pushback went like, who told you that lie? Like, what is it that you do? You know what I'm saying? What is it that you do that requires perfection? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, in my head, I would say that that's almost a self-inflicted thing.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody ever tells you, hey, you got to be perfect. But I think in our minds,
for sure,
we are so used to being rewarded and are always looking for affirmations that we just think the only way we can get those things is by being perfect. Yeah, and those things that you really want, you trying to be perfect, I feel like it puts a ceiling on you. And that's what the point that I'm trying to get. So I've always feel like I do a good job. And I think that like when I write, I don't write like, most of the stuff I'm writing to myself too. Of course.
Right. And so I don't write like I'm telling you like I'm a know-it-all expert. You know, it's almost like I feel like the same way I'm a basketball coach, I'm a writing coach. I coach through my writing. And I try to empower the reader to come up with an empowering conclusion that's going to give them the chance to be their best self. And so when that's the case, I just asked them, I said, who is more likely to get that scholarship? The most perfect version of you, right? Which doesn't make any sense, or the most aggressive version of you. And so then for them to hear that and sense that. So as we focus, let's focus on being the most aggressive version of yourself, but you brought up something else. See, there's a caveat to it. When I fail, there's a certain way I want to fail. I want to fail being aggressive. I want to fail. I say like you want to be aggressive, but along with that, you want the most aggressive, most caring, most intelligent version of yourself. See, when you care and you make a mistake, that's the best thing that could happen to you. There's a book called The Talent Code, and one of the common characteristics of uberly talented people was their frequency of failure. But because they cared so much, the intensity that they had when they failed, they learned so much from it. You know what I'm saying? So when you care about something and you're focused on it and you're intelligent, you're going to figure it out.
Agreed.
You know, and you have to, and I use the word a lot in the book, emotional toughness. There's an emotional toughness that comes with failing. There's an emotional toughness that comes with being aggressive. You know, and you have to give yourself space to fail. One of the reasons that I've been successful as a trainer and a coach is because I create a safe space for you to fail. You know what I mean? And people have to do that within themselves. It's okay. I know that I'm going to fail. I know that I'm going to make a mistake, right? But I'm going to learn from that, like you said, and I'm going to be better for the mistake. This is just a part of the process. You know, and I say a lot of times people, we're all victim of using our social media. We're quick to promote the finished product, but hide the pain of the process.
Of course, of course.
You know, and so because of that, that's where that's internalized, like nobody's failing. You know what I mean? So when I fail, like something's wrong with me.
Yeah, and I don't remember who I heard say it, but I heard somebody say, when you fail forward.
Fail forward, yeah.
Fail forward. And I remember that stuck with me because it was one of those things where, I mean, for the longest, even me, like playing basketball, it's like you never want to make a mistake. And then you realize, like, nobody cares how many mistakes you made.
Right.
It's all about what you did after the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
You know, did you sit there and pout? Did you sit there and get mad? Did you put your head down? You know, how did you react? And then obviously evolving into a work sense, it's like, stepping into a position as a CEO, you know, there was a lot of growing that I had to do. It's like, okay, how do you do these certain things, and how do you go on these new ventures, and how do you lead all these people in a new industry? You know, I had led at a former job in cannabis, and then it's like I get here and I'm like, okay, this is clothing, and they've been doing this for so long. But again, it's like taking all the things and moments where I felt like, hey, I could have been better, and learning from them, and not being too stubborn to be like, hey, I'm only going to do it this way because that's the safe way. You know, and I realized over time that trying to do anything safe in a business sense is only going to have you making safe revenue, making safe connections, and never actually getting outside of the box, you know, and reaching to new elements and new places, and also connecting with new people. So
so like that takes me back to the quote that I use to open the book, T.S. Eliot, you know, if you're never in over your head, you'll never know how tall you are. You know, do things that scare the hell out of you, do things that you don't think you could do, because a lot of times you'll prove to yourself that you're holding yourself back. You know what I'm saying? But you have to commit to going through that process. And there's another layer to that. I have a young lady that I'm working with now, and she gonna be a good player, bro. She's got the goods. She just doesn't know it yet. A lot like you. You know what I mean? I remember when I first started training you, and that's one of the most rewarding things about working with somebody on the court, but even that's the passion in which I wrote. Like I feel like I'm hopefully writing to this book, to Underdog, that, you know, is going to be the next, you know, platinum musician or CEO or whatever it is, but you see something in somebody before they do. It's the challenge, and it's frustrating because it's just like, if they knew what I knew, they would get why I pushed them so hard. If they knew what I knew about them and where they're capable of going, they would get it. You know, like with you, I remember when we first started working out, that man was hiding in the shower crying because it was, as I was pushing you so hard, because I knew, even though you were a 7th grader, I knew that one day you could be, you know, playing against Arizona in the NCAA tournament, getting a double-double, you know, but I knew what the work it required. But getting back to this young lady, she gets so frustrated because I've pushed her, coached her and empowered her to be aggressive. I said, what stands between you and getting everything you want out of basketball for the next year and a half, for the next year and a half, are you willing to be your most aggressive self? Are you willing to be your most aggressive self? And I said, understand the consequence of being aggressive. See, there's a reward long-term for being aggressive, but to get to that long-term reward of being aggressive, there's short-term consequences for all of us. Sure. And those are things that we avoid. And I think those things, while you say it's internal, I would push back to say sometimes people, how they respond to us, make us think that we have to be perfect. Think about coaching. Think about, like, you've been working and you just need the reps. So you get in the game, you've been working on something, and you're capable of getting this move, you know, whatever it is, whether it's a post move, this or that. Well, when you go into a game, you may experience some failure. When you have failure in the game, your teammates roll their eyes at you because you may have lost the game. They may feel that's the reason they lost. Coach is slamming the clipboard. Coach takes you out of the game. So I had to get her prepared and say, but like, these are things that you have to go through. Like, you know, those things aren't final. You know, so like a lot of people, I think, while we tell them, hey, it's okay to fail, we also have got to let them be realistic with them and let them know the temporary consequences that will happen when you are the most aggressive version. I don't care what it is. It could be shooting your shot with a female. You You know what I mean? Like, you go out there and shoot your shot, man, you're going to get a lot more no's than you do yes, but you'll never get to that yes if you don't go through the no's.
That's true. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people just, and even me at times, like I'm always trying to evaluate, like, okay, how is this going to transcend to others? And then I have to remind myself, like, it's more important for it to transcend to God. Like, and as silly as that sounds, like, but then entrapping both of those and making sure that you are not only cognizant of the fact that you have a relationship with God and you're not only focused on the present moment and the people who surround you, but you're also focused on the eternal relationship you have. So it's like, in that, I think you can stumble upon, like, am I doing it perfect for God? Am I doing it perfect to the general public, you know, to my friends, to my family? And it's like, especially I think as you continue to get to new levels and never reach a plateau necessarily, people are always constantly wanting more from you. But they're never actually necessarily telling you about all the things that you're doing until almost you have almost got to a mental state where you're like, hey, do I not know what I'm doing? You know, and then it's like somebody randomly reminds you, like, hey, man, I really love what you're doing. And it's somebody you haven't talked to in, you know, months. And so it's like, obviously it's a constant battle. And I think that goes back to basketball. Like, that's why I was hiding in the shower, because I didn't want to come out and, like, fight some adversity that I had never fought. I'm like, yo, I ain't never been not the best guy on the court, you know, and I'm on the court by myself and I feel like I'm not the best guy, you know? So it's like, as you continue to take all these little tidbits and eggshells from each thing that you learn in life, I think it's important that you just continue to also pay credit to the people who give you that space to be like, hey, you can fail here. Hey, but I'm also really proud of you for X, Y, and Z. These are some things you can work on too. But it's like, I think I almost have always been curious to ask you, after you said one of the things you said, but like, how do you deal with you wanting something for someone more than they want it for themselves? Yeah,
I've gotten a lot better. So even with that, in terms of leading people, you can't want something for somebody, you know, more than they want it for themselves. And, you know, like, that's why for me, even like with the Underdog, with my writing, it's trying to convince them, you know what I mean, that they can become this. You know what I mean? When I first started, I used to give myself migraines. You know, I used to take that home with me because I wanted it so bad. You know, like, you just want, when you care for somebody so much, you want to see them win. And like, it's still hard. I've got some people in mind right now, but just, you know, it's just not their time. This isn't what they want. Like, at the end of the day, man, like, I talk a lot about greatness, but, you know, like Chauncey said one time, we did an IG live, he said, it's not a lot of cars on that road. And that's just what it is. You know, I'll never understand it. I'll never understand, like, that, going back to that T.S. Eliot quote, I'll never understand how somebody could live life in a sense, not know how tall they are. You know, and for me, like, I just, you know, like, that's why I'm so grateful for, you know, guys like you. You know, we know who you are as a basketball player, you know, because you did it. Like, you pushed through that, you know, like, you pushed through injuries, you did all that. And so for that, there's a competitive peace of mind, you know, but just understanding that, like, it's not for everybody. You know, and that doesn't make them a bad person. And I think the toughest thing is when you're talking about athletics is it's even harder because there's such a small window.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, you can't like figure it out when you're 20 and be like, okay, I understand, bro, it's too late. I think that's the hard thing. So that's a good question, but I'm still, you know, I've gotten a lot better with that, and it's still like, it's kind of like, you know, it's a gift, the gift and the curse. I'm a very, very passionate person. I'm a very, very driven person, and, you know, I express my love for the people I'm with by, you know, just encouraging them, challenging them, and hopefully empowering them to be the best they can be, because I don't want them to live with that competitive regret.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's great.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Nick Grimp. Hey, real quick, I just want to encourage you to purchase a copy of my book, Underdog. I'm not encouraging you for me, but for you. Reason being is if you are a relentless competitor that's committed to reaching your goals no matter what, the fact of the matter is you're going to have to be supported mentally and emotionally so you can be given a safe space to develop mental and emotional strength. I know Underdog will do that for you. You know, there are so many things, like so many layers that are holding them back, and just, you know, it's almost like I took all the times, you know, it stuck with me, all the people that I wasn't able to help them get over that hump of just pushing through, and then just figuring out why and this and that. And then it helps also because I'm able to have the follow-up story, like why they are grown, like this is what was holding me back, if I could go back, you know, or this is what I needed to hear. Because there's so many layers, like I said, like I think so often, and that's what I wanted to do with the book and even like the content that I make. I think that so often, you know, like motivational speeches are good and all that, but they give you a warm and fuzzy and you still got to like fight that.
What do you mean by that?
You know, so like you listen to something and it makes you feel good in the moment, but your circumstance ain't changed in a week, in a month. You know, so like say for example, some of the things I talk about in the book are things that enduring the no's. You know what I mean? Like no's are heartbreaking, no's are nasty. You know, no's will like are crippling, they'll break you down, but they're normal. A lot of people think if they get told no frequently enough, that's a sign that I should quit. But like you go look at some of the most uberly successful people and they've been told no frequently. Like I think, like you know, for me, like I'm a competitive person. So when I think about the fact that the creator, the person that developed the original recipe at KFC was told no 800 times.
Oh, it's crazy. I didn't even know that.
Walt Disney was told no 300 times to Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Rumor has it Sly Stallone was told no like over 800, 900 times to Rocky. Dyson Vacuum was like 600, nah, we good. And what is it about these people that keep showing up? And that's the thing, even peel another layer back in the book. So like endure the no's, it's like 3 layers in the book. It's, you know, I talk about my own personal experience with no's, how nasty they are. Talk about like the source of me being able to deal with it. Then I talk about Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, you know, like before he won his first Big Ten title at Michigan, when he was about to get fired, he took a pay cut. Ohio State, you know, was dominating him. He was at the press conference and his enthusiasm was wild. It was just off the charts. And he's like, yeah, I'm as enthusiastic as I've ever been. He said, no, we're going to win a Big Ten title or die trying. And you could tell this was not fictitious. This was not fake. You know, how do you have that enthusiasm? Those are the things that you have to have. You know, and I feel like a lot of times those aren't the things that we talk about. And I guess that's what I'm saying when you talk about like motivational speeches and whatnot, like really getting below the surface of some of the things that's holding people back. Yeah.
And I mean, like for me, I guess I'm not going to say I disagree, but I think like motivational speeches are super like, I think they're almost like a appetizer for the meal, so to speak.
Well, yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying.
You know, it's like, and my fault if I misinterpreted what you were saying, but like, it's like, hey, you're going through something, you listen to this motivational speech.
Right.
Like, that ain't going to get you over that hump, though. You know, so it's like, that's the appetizer where it's like, hey, you can go ahead and have this meal, but do you really want to eat? You know, and so using that figuratively, I think that like, especially getting over that hump is sometimes needed to have
sometimes
some
you just
sort
need a
of
word.
motivation or a book to read or you know,
quote, like,
a quote, whatever that is, you know, whether that's something on Instagram or whatever, you know. I think that's an individual thing that people can also be cognizant of, is like what makes you tick, because that's important. Because, you know, it's like for me, I can challenge you a certain way and it might work. And then you challenge me that same way and it might not work. So I think another thing that's just valuable within everything is just figuring out how to individually communicate with people. Because I think one thing that's overshadowed is like people think being authentically themselves means that they always have to communicate in one fashion and not almost turn into a chameleon and be able to communicate with each individual differently. And so I feel like, especially you're really good at that because you can interact with somebody from the deepest part of the hood all the way to the richest suburb, you know, and communicate with them in a passionate way, which I think is a very unique thing, but I think it's also another thing that's almost overlooked.
For sure. And thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. And I think part of even like looking at life as an underdog mentality is like, no matter how high up you get, there's still a certain impression that you want to uphold to people, you know, because it's like you could coach everybody the exact same way. And whether that would make people continue to come back or push people away or what that would do is completely up to, you know, whatever it is. But I think the real thing is the fact that you know how to interact with individuals and also pull those little niches out of them and their own greatness. And I think that's the beauty of it.
No, I appreciate it. I think like there are three things that popped up. One, you know, I use the analogy like, because I realized what you just said. So I enjoy leading leaders, and we talk about communicating a lot, right? And so, you know, like I'm a dog person, you're a dog person, and like you know, it's crazy that people take the time to figure out how to communicate with a dog more than they do a person. Like, you know, the tone to use, you know this, you know, if you need to snap your fingers, all the here, back, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But it's that same energy. So I used the analogy once. Let's just say, you know, like you is like, Nick, I just want to help you, you know, support your book, blah, 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 whatever. So I'm going to send you 15 grand. What's the first question you ask after that?
What do you need in return?
Well, okay, maybe that. But you're probably going to ask, how do you receive your money?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or you're going to know, he don't have Cash App.
For sure.
So before I send somebody this money, I'm going to know how they're able to receive money. It might be an old church lady. She don't have no technology. You're going to have to go give her a physical check. You know what I'm saying? It may be somebody in the streets. You're going to have to give him cash. Somebody hates Venmo. I only use Apple Pay. You know what I mean?
Whatever.
So before I have something of value to give you, I'm going to find out how you're able to receive it. So it's the same way. Before I tell you this, I'm going to find out, you know, is it a text message? Do I need to call you out in front of somebody to get your message? Do I need to put my arm around you? Do I need to take you to Papa Do's? Whatever it is. You know what I mean? But a lot of people, to your point, don't take time to do it. You know, communication's a two-way street. Just because I'm sending it, like, I got to make sure you receive it.
For sure.
So using the money example, if you send me 15 grand, you ain't gonna make sure, hey bro, did you get that?
For sure.
Same thing. Like, I gotta be like, man, like I said it, but so many people, I think that so many people when they communicate are self-absorbed. So they just say, well, I said it. So no, I think that's huge for sure. The other thing is like, I think that people have to do a better job of learning themselves.
For sure.
So a lot of people haven't spent enough time with themselves to even know how they best receive communication.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I think that's what causes a lot of people to also judge others, is because they're so busy trying to avoid themselves that they just want to reach out and seek how they can judge somebody else for something that they're doing, rather than taking it in as a moment to be like, hey, I understand that this person is doing X, Y, and Z, or why they're doing it, or why I'm doing it. And I think you have to always dial it back and not necessarily be the person to point fingers and call out people for their mishaps, but also, like you said, if you never know yourself, how you gonna know your friend? How you gonna know your brother? How you gonna know the person you're coaching? You know, your employee, whoever that is. And I think that's what a lot of people are also going back to the perfection thing, is people think that in order to actually bring things full circle, you have to be perfect, and there's no flaws within your perfection. So it's just like a catch-22, you know. So then you're playing the game of perfection added in to the fact that, hey, I told you, it's like you said, I told you.
Right.
You didn't hear me? It's like, yeah, you could have screamed. If I don't like to hear it in that tone, I might have not heard you.
Right.
But again, it's like getting back to that perfection thing. And it's not about whether or not you told them. It's about, did you tell them in the proper way for them to hear you?
Right. Like, even like you think about text messages, like people that leave it on read, like just because you sent it, like, you know, doesn't mean it was received. It's the same thing with communication. I do want to, like, you know, you just said something about one with the relationships. I think that a lot of times, and this has been, I've had to overcome this a lot in my relationships, is a lot of times you've got to value yourself enough to have healthy relationships and friendships. I've been through a stage where I didn't value myself enough to have the type of friends that they weren't, maybe not that I'm a perfect friend, I'm a flawed friend, but I am a great friend. And I devalued myself and had relationships with people that weren't giving me that same energy. And the way I said it was like we were playing baseball. And in baseball, like, there's agreements in sports, there's rules. Like, okay, after 3 strikes, you're out. I was like, we need to have agreements with our friendships, because like I felt like I was having friendships and they would have 1 strike in terms of a mess up. They get to 3, let me get another one. I'm giving 6, 7 strikes, they still not out. Then I have 1 strike. Like, that's it, bruh. And for the longest, I just took that for what it was and went into relationships with this pressure that I did have to be perfect. Instead of like, nah, man, like, here's the thing. Like, now I've evolved where I communicate clearly. Like, look, let's make an agreement before this gets serious, whether it's a business relationship, romantic, whatever. I am flawed, which means I am going to fail you. I think there's a saying, somebody's quote, it says a relationship consists of 2 great forgivers. I expanded on that. A healthy relationship consists of 2 great forgivers and 2 authentic, willing apologizers. Because we're both going to fail. When I fail, like, I'm going to apologize. I'm not going to apologize because I have to. I'm going to do it because I want to. And my actions are going to align with the verbal apology I'm giving you by doing my best to make sure that I never do that again. A willing apologizer. And then somebody that's going to forgive, somebody that's not going to hold it over your head, somebody that's going to give you grace and all that. And I think a lot of us, because we take that ideal of perfection into our relationships, and even in that, it prevents us from being our best self, because it's just like you're walking on eggshells or you're second guessing yourself or whatever. So I think that has a lot to do with a lot of people in relationships. Just they sense this expectation that they have to be perfect within it.
Yeah. Speaking to that, like, what are your thoughts on expectations? Like, how do you create a standard and create, for instance, the baseball system and create strikes without necessarily creating an expectation of that person to be perfect? Because I feel like it's hard to do so in life, and that's something that even I struggle with, because it's like, why'd you give them a strike? Because you expected them to know that you weren't gonna like whatever they did, you know. And that's what's tricky, is it's like we all are supposed to be forgiving, but it's like we also create that expectation. But you know, it's just. Well,
I think one of it a lot, what we talked about before, communication. Well, you know what I'm saying. But then also just going into a space. It's funny because, you know, like yesterday you got stuck in work. I'm here, all cameras lined up. Oh man, I couldn't be there. You know what happened to me 2 weeks ago? I'm interviewing Squizzy, and I did the same thing to him. You know what I'm saying? Because I was like, my barber ran late. You know, black barbers, he ran late. Got stuck in traffic. He's downtown, his new spot. Like, he had a small window of time. Like, I felt terrible. I just talked to him the other day. No big deal, bro. We good. So what would I look like? Oh man, how you do that to me? So I think being mindful, you know, of that, like, your stuff stinks too.
For sure.
You know, so I think that that's important, you know, like to have that grace, because, you know, like if you have healthy relationships, you're giving grace too.
For sure.
And I think maybe a lot of it has to do with maybe you're in unhealthy relationships where that's the norm. But I think, yeah, just communicating, you know what I'm saying?
And being forgiving, I think, even.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe it's that setting expectations is okay, but being forgiving and understanding that, like you said, coming to a place of authenticity where it's like, hey, I'm going to fail at some point. I'm not going to be perfect here, you know, and that even goes back to the first topic. It's like, but no matter what you strive for, you still are going to stumble and fail along the way.
But here's what I discovered the root of that a lot of times is like most relationships that you have as an adult are transactional.
For sure.
But while most of them are transactional, most of them, they finesse like it's relational. It's relational because it has to be to get the transaction. So, and that's where, to me, that's where that comes from.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I guess maybe the reason I've never really thought about that is because I tend to strive towards the relationship side before the transaction even comes, because I think that it's important to understand somebody and what their actual wants are and what gets them to tick, you know, what makes them overcome, and how do they perform when they fail, you know, or how do they react when things don't go their way. So I think being cognizant of all those things.
Yeah. Keep going. I got to send somebody the location.
Oh, no. No, but I mean, like, I think in all that we do, it's just bringing not only the concept of failure not being a bad thing and failing forward, and taking that underdog mentality and just allowing yourself to know that a lot of people aren't going to necessarily give you your flowers until you already know you have your flowers. And that's the sickest part. It's like by the time people are willing to start handing giving you all the rah-rah, it's like, I know. I wish you would have told me when I was having those tough days.
Yeah. So like I talk about that. I talk about that in the book. I feel like you tee me up for promos, but
that's good. I'm good.
Yeah, it's so one I did when I launched the Underdog, I said something like, it was like the podcast. I said, man, you know, like, stop waiting for people in this world to give you your flowers. Like, you don't have to wait for flowers. You have the power to plant your own garden.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? Go get your own. But, yeah, like, I just think that so many people, like you said, and you know, the affirmation and encouragement. So it's a 2-part chapter in the book where I talk about, you know, you cannot have the fruit in your life. You can't have sweet fruit without first committing to developing deep roots. And I think that's an analogy we all have to hold on to. See, like, the book is written to ambitious people that are committed to getting the most out of life. That when they get done with their life, they go on, they pass on into eternity and be like, I'm ready to go. I got everything out of this experience. You know what I'm saying? When you do that, you are going to commit to developing deep roots. But the thing about developing deep roots is they take a lot of time. The thing about when you commit to developing deep roots with your life, you're going to go through stages of your life where you're going to be misunderstood, mislabeled, misjudged. Because you can't commit to developing deep roots without going through a stage where you're living in the dirt and the darkness. That's when you find out who your real friends are. When somebody's willing to, like, still be around you and surround and support you, right? When you're in that dark stage, in that dirty stage, because the outside world, not only are they not going to encourage you, they're going to be like, look at him, like, he dirty. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? He failed. But to your point, that's when you need encouragement the most. You know, like, when I launched the book, bro, the launch party was a vibe. And I'm so grateful that everybody came there and I had my suit on, you know, I was looking good. But it was those people that were there for me when I was dwelling in the dark to birth that, like, the server Claire at Hopper that used to just, like, you know what I'm saying, just always encourage me. The people at Olive and Finch, the coffee shop I go to, that got my book proudly displayed on their, like, on their deal. Just a book random with all this food and drink and all those type of people. That's cool. That saw me showing up rain, sleet, snow. Like, all those type of people. Because that's when I needed the encouragement. And then the second part of that, it helps you figure out who your root encouragers are. So you need root encouragers, not fruit praisers. Fruit praisers is cool. I'm glad you praise my fruit. They praise you after the fact. I don't need encouragement for my book after the fact. You know what I mean? I need it. So to your point, you know, like Drake says, like, what is it? And how about now? Funny how it's got to get dark, ironically enough. Funny how it has to get dark out before you see who's really with you. Yeah. That's what he's saying. Yeah. Like, you want to find out, like, who's really with you? Like, you see those Instagram posts and videos and it says, go disappear for 3 months, which is great. I mean, I had to do it for a year to write the book. But organically, you're going to find out who's really with you and who falls off.
For sure. And I think that even, like, one of my favorite quotes that I created was, you have to go through it to grow through it. You know, like, because again, like, how you really gonna grow if you just are constantly at a plateau? Life's just the same. Like, certain times you got to really hit that break point where you're like, I need to get back up. I gotta get on my feet. I gotta not only get to the place where I thought I was, but I gotta exceed to get even further, you know. And I'm sure that's what continued to not only challenge you, because it's like being a good trainer, being a good coach. It's like, oh wait, nobody thought you were gonna write a book 10 years ago, and then you write a book. And it's like, oh, you didn't only write one book, you wrote 2 books, you know. And it's like, oh, you didn't only do that, you started a podcast. And you know, it's like all those things, it's like those are all things that you probably really dreamt of in some of the darkest moments where you were like, I don't even know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it. You know, and I think that is what is the beauty in the underdog story, is that, like, you may be down in the dumps, you know, when you really start to realize like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to come up. I was supposed to be right here going through this feeling, this feeling, in order to really decide that I needed to not only get to where I was, but to get to a higher place and to challenge myself.
Yeah, no question. And I'm grateful that I had to go through it, because for me, like I said, for me, this book is just like really below the surface of support somebody on an emotional, mental level that's got ambitious goals. And so because of that, you know, even the process of me writing it, like I used the word in the book, I developed emotional toughness. And I did that, one, because like all the guys out there with an overinflated male ego and you know, just kind of influenced by toxic masculinity, they think emotional is stigmatized. So I just put toughness. And to be your best self and to show up like that, you got to be emotionally tough. You know, because anytime you commit to discovering who you really are, discovering how tall you are, and doing all these ambitious things, CEO of a successful company, writing a book, whatever, there are going to be people that you think, like Fab says in the song, he said, your day one was plotting on you since the day before. And the emotional hurt of thinking somebody like, so I have my 3rd book is it's done. It's a guided journal. Okay. You know, I think that's important. We'll touch on that in a minute. But he said, he just says your day one was plotting on you since the day before. So like I talk in this journal, one entry is a guided journal to handle the backstabbing in your life.
And I think that even goes to a point I remember you made to me, a couple guys back in high school. You said something had happened and there were some circumstances, and I remember you reminded us, you told us, you said, you have to realize that everybody who's in your camp isn't in your corner.
Everybody ain't in your camp. Ain't in your corner.
I think that goes into what you're saying.
And so for me, so I wanted to, if we're really going to support people that are ambitiously living life, we've got to support them emotionally, because the emotional weight of like a relationship, so the journal entry backstab that I talk about, I said like backstabbing is high level hate. You know, because you're getting hated on, somebody that you thought had your back instead stabbed you in the back. Like, you got to deal with that. You know, and like developing the emotional tools, the group that can support you emotionally, the emotional toughness, acknowledging your emotions is so important, because I'll be damned if I'm going to let somebody that stabbed me in the back, I'm doing all the work. I'm getting up at 5 in the morning. I'm doing all this. And because I can't properly handle this emotional hurt of somebody backstabbing me, be it a family member, be it a coworker, whatever it is, that ain't going to be the reason I don't make it. And so like, that's just an example of kind of the things that I kind of wanted to serve the audience and address, like those type of things, because that's real. And a lot of us don't know how to even deal with that. And we just hold it all inside. And that's the very thing that's holding us back.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think even speaking to the fact of backstabbers, it's like that concept in itself will hold a lot of people back.
For sure.
That will make a lot of people quit.
Yeah.
You know, somebody commenting one negative thing on their post will make them stop posting.
Yeah.
Nobody liking their post will make them stop posting. You know, whatever that is, it's like nobody coming and supporting them in the gym. They're not going to the gym. You know, it's like in everything you do. I think the way that you overcome backstabbing is by always holding yourself to a standard. And I think that gets back to the point of knowing yourself, because in order to really ever hold yourself to a standard, you have to know yourself and know what makes you tick and know what doesn't work for you. And also be willing to go to those realms to communicate that to whomever you are communicating with.
And that, for me, the journal and even the book, you know, like as questions, it's really going to empower somebody. It's going to have them think the things that they need. Because I think you have to first think it to yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta, let's just get to know ourselves. Let's get to trust ourselves. Let's communicate to ourselves. And that's kind of how I started journaling, is, you know what I mean? Like, really just, because I could confide in myself. You know what I'm saying? I could trust myself with my secrets and my feelings. And a lot of times it was a buffer before I went to be able to go to somebody else. So here's the thing, like, I just wanted to, like, with this last segment, you know, as I mentioned, like, I wrote my book. I'm not a therapist. But I know that I feel like my book is an advocate to encourage people to be more aware of their mental health. We talk about coping. There's a chapter in the book called Care How You Cope. You know, like, this life, and especially when you're an aggressive competitor, there's going to be heartbreak, there's going to be heartache, there's going to be soul-crushing moments. And if you don't establish healthy coping, you know, one thing about it is like, you're going to have heartbreak, you're going to have failure, you're going to have these things. The second thing that's true is you're going to cope. So if you don't establish healthy coping with some of the things we talked about, I think journaling. I ran into a journal. That's how I came up with the third book that's yet to be released, the guided journal. I ran into this lady. She was giving grandmama vibes. She was dope, and I was sitting there reading and journaling. She was sitting there reading and journaling. I ended up talking to her for 3 hours. She said, "I'm a journaling coach." I was like, "Dang, that's a thing." She said, "Yeah, I coach women that have been traumatized and abused in relationships to empower them to heal through journaling."
Oh wow.
And I was like, wow,
that's amazing.
Stay with me. So, like, yeah, coming up with the journal, but this, you know, this being Mental Health Month, May, you know, I just, for me, like, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've realized I've got more healing to do. You know what I mean? And, you know, what I realized is like, to heal, you got to deal. Meaning, in order to be completely healed, you have to deal with stuff. And I thought I had dealt with it, and I've done a good job, but there's been another layer, you know, of being able to deal with things. And even me, some of the unhealthy ways in which I cope with some of the hurts that I didn't even know that I truly like needed to dig it a little deeper, like, have, you know, like, realized. And for me, like, I'm a social person, being around people, you know, like, you know, going out to eat here and doing all this, I was preventing myself from dealing with things, and I kind of, you know, stopped coping in that way and dealt with some things, and it was painful, man. Like, it's not been easy, but there's a purpose in the pain, you know. Okay. Like, I want to be the absolutely healed. I want to be the best version of myself. I love the people around me. I love myself. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be, you are what you attract. So I want to attract great relationships in every aspect of my life. So the more that I deal with these hurts and heal from them, the better type of people that I'm going to attract. And so I just say that I just want to encourage who's ever watching this to just not be afraid to heal, because life's with all of us. All of us
for sure
have gone through some stuff, and just encourage them to, like, really think about that as we enter mental health awareness month.
I agree. No, that's beautiful. And I think I never really delved into the concept of like coping and the fact that everybody copes, but a lot of people try and act like they're never going through anything. So that's why we never.
Which is coping in itself.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So I just think that's a unique point you touch on, but it is something you got to be careful with, because there is a dark place you can go with coping, and you see it all over, and people going into bad functions of life and doing things that they're not supposed to. But it's like that there's definitely a carefulness you need to take in your approach with how you deal with things, and it's like you say, a lot of times people get so caught up in life and being busy and all these things that they start realizing they don't even know that they're really coping with things. And then all of a sudden it's like in that moment of darkness, or when they're forced to go take some time away, is when they're like, oh geez, I have a lot more problems than I thought. There's a lot more things I need to deal with and work through.
And to take it a step further, just as you do go, man, just be gentle with yourself. Be proud of yourself. Acknowledge the strength and the courage to do it. Hopefully, and even like that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is to comfort them. You know what I mean? To comfort somebody that's in that space. Like as they deal with things, and I just pray that everybody that has the courage to deal with and heal whatever it is they need to heal from, that they are supported. They got a community of people that loves them. That's why one of the reasons I do what I do, why I write what I write, why I coach the way I coach, is because I don't ever want anybody to go. I can't change your toughest times, for sure, but I can make sure that you don't have to go through them alone. I can make sure that I can help you help yourself by helping you have the proper perspective, by supporting you, loving you, encouraging you, and affirming you, and all of that. So,
for sure. No, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. Appreciate you for stopping by.
Yes, sir.
Be a good person. Like, how can they tap in?
Beagoodperson.com. Yep. Instagram, we got Instagram, TikTok. BAGP,
right?
Yeah. BAGP is what our little acronym is. So, but I mean, the main thing is just beagoodperson.com. We got a lot of dope stuff coming out in these next couple of months. So be sure to tune in. We'll make sure we get Nick some so he can rep it on the podcast.
Or they just could do a Underdog, Be a Good Person collab. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Might have to look at that. Might have to make that happen.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Yeah, bro. I appreciate it.